War in Ukraine. The biggest war Europe has seen since World War II. In only 3.5 months of fighting, at least 4,169 civilians have been confirmed killed, according to the United Nations. As to date, it is estimated that the war in Ukraine has already caused over $600 billion in damages, and it has caused perhaps the biggest global divide since the days of the Cold War. Additionally, 15,000 to 31,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, over 1,000 Russian tanks have been destroyed, and 12 Russian generals have been killed as well. It's believed that Russia is spending a whopping $955 million a day on the war. And if that weren't bad enough, the tough Western sanctions on Russia will decimate the Russian economy and may in fact bring the Russian bear down to its knees. With all these horrifically negative consequences of the war, the question on everybody's mind is, what in the world does Vladimir Putin want in Ukraine? And that's the question we will be answering today. But before we do, please pause this video and subscribe to our channel so you can get the latest scoop on what's really going on in your world and avoid biased media and fake news. Anyway, let's get into the video. To understand what Vladimir Putin wants in Ukraine, you have to see the world through the eyes of Vladimir Putin. Because if you can understand what someone sees, then you can likely understand their goal. And Vladimir Putin's goals are pretty clear. Vladimir Putin served in the Soviet Union KGB, and he worked in counterintelligence. And he was tasked with some pretty serious stuff. In fact, multiple reports have suggested that Putin was sent by the KGB to New Zealand, allegedly working for some time undercover as, among at least one other alias, a Bata shoe salesman in central Wellington. So this guy's got experience in espionage. However, in 1991, Putin resigned from the KGB on the second day of the 1991 Soviet coup d'etat attempt against Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. Putin said, "As soon as the coup began, I immediately decided which side I was on." Now, here is where you really have to get into the mind of Vladimir Putin. You have to imagine that you were an agent for, in your opinion, a great empire. In fact, your nation has never been so powerful before, and now it is the world's few superpowers, at least one of them. You are a fervent patriot and a nationalist who intensely believes in the unification of all your ethnic brothers and sisters across the world. You truly believe that a world without your country is not a world worth living in, and because of that, you are very keen on strength and power of your country. And then, almost overnight, your once superpower of a country falls apart into many separate republics, and your country is no longer a superpower, and in your head, that is the greatest geopolitical disaster in human history. To make matters worse, the new republics that you were once united under one flag are now planning to become westernized, and as if that couldn't get worse, some of these republics are even planning to join what you consider the devil incarnate, NATO. You now become desperately bent on reuniting your former empire by whatever means necessary, even if it means war. Now, with this kind of thinking, it becomes a little easier to see why Vladimir Putin is fighting his war in Ukraine. I mean, after all, Ukraine, a former Soviet territory, is now becoming really close with the West and may even join NATO, and that may make Putin just a tad nervous that the Soviet Union's former territory is now on the side of NATO, which he does not like. It's Russia's worst enemy. But still, even with this kind of thinking, Putin is taking a tremendous risk in Ukraine. Because if he fails, he will suffer the international humiliation of a defeated nation. He will also have to live with the brutal Western sanctions. He will risk serious possibility of a coup, and he'll even have a bigger problem with NATO due to the fact that Finland and Sweden are currently in the process of joining NATO. And this is when geopolitics becomes a lot like chess, and this is also when those who only know how to play checkers will surely fail. You see, many would look at Putin's invasion of Ukraine and say it's too risky, and in a way, they would be right, but, and here's when the but comes in. If Putin wins in Ukraine, the reward will be well worth the risk. If Putin wins in Ukraine, he will give Russia the biggest geopolitical win since World War II. Not only will victory in Ukraine give the Russian armed forces back its fear reputation, it will also give Russia tremendous control over the world and the way it operates. Yes, you heard me right. Vladimir Putin, if he wins in Ukraine, will have much of the world at his mercy. For example, Russia and Ukraine supply a whopping 30% of the world's wheat, and if Russia takes Ukraine, that will give them control over 30% of the entire world's wheat. In fact, it's estimated that the wheat as a whole is a staple crop for 35% of the world's population. That means wheat is a primary food source for 2,730,000,000 people worldwide. And it also means that these people could quickly find themselves at the mercy of Putin within a moment. So if Putin takes Ukraine, he will have tremendous leverage over other world powers as well, including the United States and NATO. And knowing how loving and friendly Putin is, he would probably do something a little like this. Hey, listen, you're either going to give me what I want or I'm going to starve you. And knowing how cowardly the current US president is, that kind of blackmail will likely work. Ukraine also has tremendous natural resources, and a win in Ukraine will not only be an agricultural win for Russia, it will be also an economic win and an energy win. Here's why. Ukraine possesses 900 billion cubic meters of proven reserves of natural gas. That means Ukraine ranks second for gas reserves in Europe, only behind Russia. In other words, if Putin takes control of Ukraine, he will practically have a monopoly on Europe's natural gas supply. The thing is, Europe has passed strong sanctions on Russia, and in theory that would destroy the Russian economy, or at very least seriously damage it, right? Actually, no, because Russia is merely sending their oil to China and India, who are more than happy to take it, and Europe is actually hurting themselves with these sanctions. Also, Russia's economy is more than intact. They actually made $98 billion in fossil fuel exports alone in the first 100 days of the Ukraine war. Finally, if Putin wins in Ukraine, he will be much, much closer to his dream of restoring the old Soviet Empire under his control. Now, just to be clear, Putin is not a communist, okay? He's not trying to restore the Soviet Empire into communism. He's trying to restore the Soviet Empire, but more so he's trying to restore Tsarist Russia's empire. But he would like to unite it under his control, which would be under Putinism. But it won't just stop there. It's likely that Putin will proceed to invade the Baltic states as well. Putin may reason that if he takes Ukraine and controls 30% of the world's wheat, along with most of Europe's natural gas reserves, NATO will simply decide the battle is not worth it and allow him to conquer the Baltics. Although it's highly unlikely for this to happen, it is a possibility considering how divided NATO is, and we all know a house divided against itself never stands. In the end, Putin's main goal is to restore the Soviet Empire under his rule, and that is the primary reason for the war in Ukraine, along with the other reasons we've just covered earlier. Do you want to know how NATO was created and why Russia hates it so much? Then subscribe to our channel and find out in the next video, because we will be producing a lot of videos in the series of the Ukraine war, and if you do not want to miss it, subscribe and stay tuned for the latest video. God bless, and I'll see you next time.